Well, yesterday morning I had the pleasure of being able to greet and honor the great team and the people of Morning Edition. It's the 35th anniversary of the show, and I pointed out the show launched in 1979, and I said two really great things happened for broadcasting in 1979. They launched their show, and I, as a disc jockey, went off the air. So broadcasting was dramatically improved. The show started in 1979 with 500,000 listeners. It's the number one news show on the radio now with over 13 million weekly listeners. And yesterday morning I was really struck by the incredible stories. The stories were fun, they were interesting, they were incredibly emotional. And I wish I could have stayed for more, but we had the foundation meeting. I had to race up, so I think I got half of the program. Maybe we'll hear some of the things this morning that I didn't get to hear yesterday. I want to salute the entire group. Chris Turpin, who is our interim head of news, Ellen McDonald, who will be up in a second, Metalika Sika, Tracy Wall, who is the executive producer of Morning Edition right now, all the producers, the editors, the reporters, everybody that works on this remarkable show that started many, many years ago, 35 years ago with Bob Edwards. But this morning we're going to be talking with Steve, Renee, and David about what they're doing, and their great storytelling, their great reporting, the chemistry, the amazing engagement that you folks have, and the combination of seriousness when it's necessary, and there's unfortunately a lot of that being necessary these days, but also in those other moments for a break, whimsy and humor. And we're so appreciative of what you do every morning. And I want to bring up Ellen McDonald, who for years, I think she told me the last surviving member of the original Morning Edition crew, who was executive producer of the show for years and now executive editor at NPR. And the other thing that's not in her title, but you should know about Ellen, is she is one of the people that has probably hired more of the great talent in our organization than anyone. So please welcome Ellen McDonald.
Hi, I'm executive editor of all the news shows. I started my career 35 years ago as a news writer for Morning Edition. Over the years, I went on to be the line producer for 5 years overnight. I was an executive producer of Morning Edition for 10 years. I'd like to share some of the stories of those early days with you, but first, I want us to remember the man who had the vision to create Morning Edition. He passed away a few weeks ago, Frank Mankiewicz. He was a former CEO of National Public Radio, NPR. He was the president of NPR from 1977 to 1983. He passed away at the age of 90. The story that Frank told me years ago was that he got a call from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting asking him what he'd do if they gave him a pot of money, special funding. He said, I'd start a morning news show. And that's just what he did. It was not universally embraced by the rank and file in the news division. Reporters liked filing for one show, the show, all things considered. The new upstart meant filing 2 pieces a day and coming in during the middle of the night. I know that you know we've had a little drama over the years at NPR. But let me tell you, Morning Edition exploded with drama back in the day. 10 days before the show launched, the 2 hosts, Pete Williams, now of NBC, Mary Tillotson of CNN, the host-to-be of Morning Edition, were fired, as was the executive producer, the producer. Everyone who came in with that team was fired, except yours truly. I was so low on the food chain that I just kept my head down and wrote the news. The new hosts would be Bob Edwards and Barbara Hochter. Barbara left after a few weeks. Over the years, that 2-hour studio-based show would evolve into a 7-hour agenda-setting news program. It would be updated and refreshed throughout the morning. The reporter hosts would broadcast from Kabul, Cuba, the entire border of the US and Mexico, the ancient Grand Trunk Road. David Green, Steve Inskeep, and Renee Montaigne would talk to politicians, poets, and presidents. I'm going to have Steve, Renee, and David talk about a special moment they had in hosting Morning Edition in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to introduce you to the remarkable staff of Morning Edition. They work the worst hours, have the best ideas, and they have stomachs of steel if you saw what they eat in the middle of night. And they truly love the craft of radio. I worked the overnight for 5 years as line producer, and I can say with great authority, you have to love the work because the shift is unforgiving. These folks come in when most of us go to bed. Everyone on Morning Edition works the overnight, some more than others, but everyone rotates through this grueling schedule. And yet, there is amazing resilience and joy with being part of the Morning Edition team. So I introduce you now to the Morning Edition Overnight.
Years I spent on the overnight. Think about what you were doing for 14 years. I wasn't doing that. I was on the overnight.
Some of our best talent overnight because things can move fast and they have to be right.
I think the first night wasn't so bad because the adrenaline was so rushing.
All of it is labor intensive because you want it to be right and because it's supposed to cover the world.
People are waking up and they want to know what's going on, and that's kind of worth staying up all night for.
You know, it is exhausting. It's never normal. You feel constantly like you have jet lag on this shift.
I actually think that this group of people talks more about sleep and sleeping medication and sleeping strategies more than any other human beings in the entire world.
Some people did the split shift sleeping. That's what I called the Carl Castle approach. I did that for years.
You're exhausted all the time, and so you get into some sort of rhythm.
Some people go to bed early, 5, 6 o'clock. I can't do that, no primetime television.
The overnight is sort of a mixture of like a slumber party and a high-stress work environment in that everyone's a little loopy.
You have to have snacks.
I'm eating a bag of watermelon.
Because if you don't, then you are hungry, and there is no cafeteria or, stores or anything.
There's a joke about the overnight 15 where everyone sort of gains 15 pounds when they start the overnight.
There's always something on Morning Edition, usually something that will make you fat.
Sometimes it feels like camp or something, some environment where you're doing something really hard together.
Plot my heart rate and blood sugar level.
Yes, we're all tired. Yes, we all forget who our names are, but when it really counts, everybody just seems to snap out of the fog.
There's quality control that goes straight through when the show airs. People listening, fine-tuning to see everyone, despite all of their sleep deprivation. I mean, this team can just focus all of a sudden and be 100% on their game.
Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Hey.
You said left behind by the man who was still in the apartment, and of course the man isn't still in the apartment. I think it's clear enough, but if we could retrack it, we might as well clarify.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Thanks.
Duncan's bed sheets, his clothes, the mattress he slept on, it's all still in the apartment. And it could potentially pose a contamination hazard if there's fluids in there.
See ya. Get some sleep, all right?
Okay, great.
Bye-bye.
I get here about 4 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing that I do is write what are called the opens, or mine anyway. All right, let's just fire away here. Good morning. After a Hamas rocket exploded near the Tel Aviv airport, the Federal Aviation Administration banned U.S. airlines from flying into the Israeli airport. More on Morning Edition from NPR News. I think I need to say for 24 hours. It's 24
Yeah,
hours.
so what did you say to the FAA?
Yeah.
Right now is where it gets very, it seems kind of calm, but it's underneath it all kind of hectic.
Hit it.
Good morning. I'm Steve Inskeep. Toyota wants you to keep an eye on your kids while driving. A new version of its Sienna minivan includes an optional pull-down mirror to allow better surveillance of the back seat. And if you see something, you can say something, because the minivan also includes a feature called Driver Easy Speak. It's a kind of intercom that allows you to speak to the kids as on a public address system without shouting. Don't make me get in that back seat. It's Morning Edition.
That was great. All right, so that's it for pre-recording for now. We'll do Open 2 as soon as Open 1 airs.
It's a pretty big commitment to do all of what many people do during the daytime, doing it overnight like this.
When you switch shifts, the first day or so isn't too bad because the adrenaline is kind of there, but it's when you adjust to, the second, the third day that you feel your body just, literally, dismantling.
It's an exhausting job. It takes a lot out of you. Sometimes you are struggling to get through an afternoon after getting up very early in the morning.
It's worth it.
I think we need to raise a glass to the team of Morning Edition. Most of them are home sleeping right now. I'd also like to recognize Tracy Wall, the executive producer of Morning Edition. When I was promoted to executive editor, I left kicking and screaming because being executive producer of Morning Edition was the best job I ever had. But I knew I was in good hands bringing Madalika to the helm. And now our amazing host, Steve, David, and Renee.
Want us to stand.
You'd rather stand? You're not going to sit?
Oh, no,
Can you
no.
see me?
All right.
Can you see it?
Would you rather we stand
It'll be
up
easier
there?
for us to stay awake if we remain
All right.
standing.
All right. Well, that does it. So I've asked them to talk a little bit about one or two stories that they remember from the days of Morning Edition. We're going to begin with David. He's the newest member.
Which I'm happy about, because yesterday morning I had to follow Bob Edwards, Renee Montagne, Steve Inskeep, and Susan Stamberg to the microphone. That's, if I said it was sort of a metaphor for my life, walking into a place where there are just these legendary voices and trying to play some small role. You saw from that video that Morning Edition is all about a team, an extraordinary team. And before I even came to this program, I got my taste of that and didn't even realize I was about to get it. I was based in Moscow and was sent to the Tunisian-Libyan border to cover part of the Arab Spring. This was just days before the bombs started falling over Tripoli. And they sent a senior producer from Morning Edition, Jim Wildman, to join me. And Jim landed, and I immediately felt like I had just met a member of my family who I hadn't met yet. He was so poised and so passionate about radio and figuring out a way to bring this difficult story and this chaotic place to life for our listeners. And I remember we kept trying to get across the border. And to me, not having the radio genius that Jim did, I was thinking, okay, we're going to try and get across the border. And Jim said, no, we've got to bring our listeners to the border and try to cross the border with them. And we're walking towards the border, and there were guards with guns sort of pointed at us from the Libyan side. And Jim said, I'm a little worried about having a microphone out. I was like, yeah, I am too. And he said, so I'm going to take this little tiny recorder, I'm going to put it in my pocket, just talk. I said, just talk into your pocket? Talk into my pocket. Talk in your pocket. So we're walking towards the border, and he just said, just keep telling me what you're seeing and hearing. And I just kept talking. And it became a few minutes of extraordinary radio thanks to Jim's creativity and genius. And I just knew that I wanted to be part of this program. And so when I started talking to Ellen and to Madalika about what would be next, I knew that this was the family I wanted to be a part of. And it's such an honor and privilege to have come. Our fearless leader, Tracy Wall, has kept that tradition of testing the bounds of radio, bringing our listeners to places we go, into the studio with us, into the conversations we have, or into remote parts of the world. Wherever we go, we want to take you there, and that's what we're all about. And I just a word to my two co-hosts. I mean, this broadcast journalism world is known for people who are turf conscious. It's known for big egos. Wow. I mean, I have never met two more gracious, welcoming people when I joined this family. And I'm really, really grateful to be part of this team. And so happy birthday to this program. And it's an honor to be part of it.
Thank you, David. So I always knew that NPR had to originate a daily show from the West Coast. Just wasn't sure exactly how it was going to happen. So when we heard about the Culver City NPR West being purchased by NPR, I immediately called Renee. I flew out west, and the two of us got ourselves into the new building. Security guards were the only people there, and we just about hung the curtains because we knew Morning Edition was coming there at some point. So now I want to introduce the amazing Renee Montaigne, the host from Culver City, and she's going to tell some of the very interesting tales of the first days of hosting from Culver City.
Well,
But that
actually,
was not from Culver City, that particular
No,
story.
first days of my hosting, but I will say this, Ellen had quite a vision because she really understood that there was, I mean, NPR has always understood there's another part of the country, but at the point in time when Morning Edition moved to our building in Culver City, there was a bureau. I mean, all of the, and we had wonderful reporters, but there was a bureau. And now we have a facility. We have an NPR West. And it's actually getting better and better and better. And I can thank all our management. And there's been some wonderful hires, and it's actually just growing and getting more wonderful. I'll tell you a story, a little walk down memory lane. And by the way, we are so lucky to have David. We waited for 10 years. We looked over the field, and finally the time was right, and the right person came along. So to have David as part of this team is fantastic. I got to thinking about Morning Edition and what was a big moment. And I mean, there's plenty. Steve and I have a red phone that's just the two of us and has a light. It's the most low-tech thing on the planet, and it's the best thing we have in the studio because I was caught in D.C., as you might have noticed, but usually I'm in Culver City, and when we want to talk to each other, we just pick up the phone, and it's actually just about as good as sitting with him because he's so busy, like this. It's like parallel play when we're actually doing the work, but you see that light blinking, and it's like, pick it up, stop everything you're doing. So that's how we communicate, I think, so well. I'll try and do it in a quick fashion because watching the overnight, I hadn't seen that video. I was so charmed by people I know very well. And what also struck me was how one thing about Morning Edition is a fair amount of turnover, as you see, is quite young people. So we bring in some of the best people, and then we watch them get better on our show, and they tend to eventually go out because, again, this is a 24-hour show, so there's more people than any other show, obviously. So I will take you back to another time, 1989, when we also had an absolutely wonderful overnight crew, and thank goodness, because I had been hosting All Things Considered, and I left All Things Considered, and just about 6 months later, I was asked to substitute because Bob was going off at summertime for vacation. Did I want to do Morning Edition? And I'm thinking, yeah, sure, of course, to host Morning Edition, and really, I mean, I'd say I didn't take it seriously, but I thought, I know my way around the studio, right? So I didn't worry about it too much. And the big news on the following Monday, when I went to bed on Friday, was Polish elections. This was June, so it was before the fall of the Berlin Wall. So it was a very big story, but a very doable story for us, and that was like the big story of Monday. And as it turns out, the prime rate led by Citibank went down from 11.5 to 11 also on Monday, which is top of the newscast. But while we were sleeping, the Ayatollah Khomeini died. And also, by Saturday night, actually Sunday morning, their time, the tanks rolled into Tiananmen Square. So there was some news, as it turned out. So I went over, boned up on Sunday, and then I went to bed, and I woke up, and I walked in, I get in, and, I know the whole thing was M Street, and I walked to the old building, and the real old building, and I walked in, and I thought, wow, who would have thought? It was pitch black, except for some big spotlight, like, rigged up over in the corner, and I thought, it never occurred to me they did this show in the dark. Well, it turns out that a rat had bitten through a cable, and there was no electricity. And there were generators, but not for most of the building. The control room had generators. I think all the machinery would have, gone out. But so the challenge I had and the overnight had was to do this show at a peak, the Monday morning of we all understood this was historic. These were peak news events. And it just so happened that someone who was to become the news director, Bill Busenberg, heard about the rat, heard that there was no electricity, and he came in the middle of the night. We ended up doing the show because we had people like that, but I have to say, we got the show on, but nothing could go right, obviously, even under those circumstances. And we got a freelancer in Poland. The line dropped out in the middle, and because we had newspapers, I was trying to figure out what I did do. But as far as I can remember, there was a Washington Post laying there, so I read the Washington Post. Secondly, I read the Washington for 4 minutes, and then we had John Hockenberry in Tehran, and I'll just say this this was the big penultimate moment of the show. John Hockenberry, we rolled through every time we were supposed to have him on. We kept rolling through the show because we couldn't get him. As it turns out, we learned later, he was on the shoulders of about 700,000, 1 million people, mourners who had seen him. He used a wheelchair. And, he's founding host of Talk of the Nation. He used a wheelchair. He was an amazing person, amazing talent. And somehow they took him to Hard, and he needed to get in to see things. And they took him, the mourners in Tehran, in this great square, carried him on their shoulders, just rolled him across, and then rolled him back again, and which made him miss all our deadlines. But he got a great story out of it. When he got on the phone, we finally got him just before the show was over, and it was like, John's on the phone. And so we get him on the phone. So I get him on the phone. I go, hey, John. I said, so you're in Tehran. And I asked him some simple first question, and he talked for 6 minutes, and I had to go, okay, bye. He was telling us about motorcycles and things that these guys were on. He was quite thrilled. I'll just say, the staff rose to the occasion, as they always do. And Bill Busenberg rose to the occasion. I was telling somebody yesterday, that there was a Coke machine, actually with apparently a generator, because I was boiling hot in the studio because there's no air conditioning. And so he came in every few minutes with a new cold drink and would hold it on my head while I was reading copy. And this is a true story. And it was like, we got through the night. And that is the story of Morning Edition. And it's the story of teamwork, and it's the story of dedication, and it's the story of really wonderful, fantastic people who are like, we must, by the scores by now, have, those who graduated. So thank you all for your support, because we can't do it without you. And we know it every day and every hour. So.
In April of 2004, I was attending my college radio station reunion in State College, Pennsylvania, and I had to keep slipping out from the reunion to try to reach Steve Inskeep, who was in Baghdad as a reporter, to ask him if he would consider temporarily hosting Morning Edition. And he said yes.
Good morning. I'm glad to see Ellen recognized, and to see that Ellen recognized Madalika and Tracy, the 3 executive producers that I've worked with. I can't tell you how much we depend on great producers, but I can illustrate it now, because here we are, 3 hosts of a national program who have come up to do a toast to Morning Edition, and not one of us succeeded in producing a drink to toast with.
Excuse me.
We don't drink.
So,
Yeah,
so
David's
if
got a
somebody
drink.
back there could produce 3 of whatever Ellen McDonald is drinking, while I speak here for a moment, that would be a fantastic thing. There's
I
one,
want
all
for
right.
my
Woo! Okay. Here they come. Here they come. Tracy, you can have it back. There we go.
Oh, thank you, Leroy.
Outstanding. Oh, did you get one for yourself? That's good.
Oh, Leroy, thank you.
Excellent. All right. Woo! I want to mention that while I forgot to get a drink, I did remember to clean my shoes this morning. They needed cleaning. When I took them out of the closet, they were covered in dust, and I realized they'd been covered in dust since 8-9 days ago when I was walking across a sugar beet field in Colorado interviewing a beet farmer, one of the voter interviews we did. And cleaning off the dust of the shoes reminded me that these same shoes, which I've had for a while, walked with me along a part of the U.S.-Mexico border earlier this year and went across parts of Syria with me. Tracy sent me in the course of a few months to Syria, Venezuela, and Iran, causing people to ask if she was trying to have me killed. But it was a great privilege to go to those places and to see things, and also to work with the NPR correspondents who make a life out of going to many of the places that you would really never rather go. Some of whom I believe, at least one or two, are here this morning. If there are any NPR correspondents out there, would you stand for a moment, please? Yeah, who do we got? Lourdes Garcia Navarro, Julie McCarthy. All right. Quill Lawrence.
Julie McCarthy and Quill Lawrence.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, I said. Okay. It's an honor to work with you guys. It's an honor to serve you guys and to work for you guys. I am mindful that when you're supporting our work, you're not supporting me, you're not supporting NPR, you're supporting your country. You are helping to provide a better public dialogue in this country, and you're serving in a way as an intelligence agency for the public. We're trying to figure out the world together. I'm mindful of a day when we changed buildings last year from the 635 Massachusetts Avenue location to our new building. It happened on a Friday morning. David and I were hosting. It was the morning that they were chasing down the suspects of the Boston Marathon bombing. The morning began, as I recall, with a sense that it might be a no-news day or a huge news day. There was a sense there was some news of some kind of chase going on, but very little was known. David and I ended up doing 7 hours of virtually all live coverage. And in fact, a little more than 7, as it turned out. Madalika Sikka walked into the studio at some point in the morning and said, "You guys realize this is the day we're changing buildings. You are to go off the air at noon from this building." And we were aware that this was the case because the rest of the company, other than Morning Edition, had already moved. People had put graffiti on the walls, demolition crews were taking apart studios even as we were using them.
They took your lights.
Yes. At noon, the microphone was going to be unplugged. Madalika walks in and says, "I need one of you to stay here a little before noon and continue anchoring live, while the other one gets in a car, goes across town to the new building, and picks up the broadcast right at noon, and continues right on for the next couple of hours, and the other one will come and join you." David stayed and got to turn out the lights for the final time in that studio where Morning Edition was broadcast for so many years. I got in a car. Madalika, didn't you drive me? I believe you did. Producers. Oh, yeah. No ID. Yeah. There you go. Producers. They let me in the building, by the way. There was a couch in the new studio, so I could take a 5-minute nap. And then David finished up at the old building, and we went live for 2 more hours from the new building. All the while, all this 9 hours as it turned out, we did not know what was going on. We did not pretend that we knew what was going on. We figured it out fact by fact by fact by fact. We were, as we said on the air at the time, collecting dots and being careful about how we connected them, not pretending that we knew more than we did. And we leaned on our amazing correspondents in the field, and leaned on our own judgment, and leaned on those producers I talked about, and worked with you in a sense. We were all figuring out the world together, and I think that is the spirit of this program that we are about to toast. No matter what happens, no matter what catastrophe there is, no matter what technical challenge there may be, we stay focused on the world around us, and we're all figuring it out together with your help. So thank you, and here's to 35 years.
And your support. Thank you for your support.